Hi everyone, welcome back to Hitchhiker's Guide to Humanity. I'm Chris, head hitchhiker and human to the alien Crystal. I'm here again today with Ronnie, human to the alien Mako, and our good friend Maureen, who is here to discuss with us tribal patterns and waist speeds today. So Ronnie, go ahead and say you're welcome, and then Maureen, you as well.
Hi, everybody. Welcome again to this episode where we talk about tribes, tribal patterns, and the issues behind West Beans. Thank you.
Hi everyone, this is Maureen again. I'm here to let you know more about Westwits and tribal patterns.
So let's just go ahead and dive into the tribal patterns first, because I think that is somewhat connected to waist speed, sort of, but there's a lot more personal preference is in waist speeds from my understanding. But going to the tribal patterns, this kind of reminds me of learning about tribal patterns in Native American tribes, because each tribe there has its own unique colors and patterns and significant meanings. And studying one tribe does not mean that you necessarily know the patterns and customs of any other tribe in America. Each one is unique. I'm assuming that is also similar in African culture, Ronnie?
Yes, that's the same in African culture. The different tribes are extremely distinct in the way they first the way they speak, second in the way they dress traditionally, third in the way they live in their different homes, their family structures. For instance, in the Luo culture, their home setup is completely different from the Kikuyu tribes, from the Kalenjin tribes, and from the Kamba tribes. The way that traditional Luo person dresses is very different from the traditional clothing of the Maasai community. The Luo people, you will find them dressing in these mostly African attires. We call them kitenges. When you go into the Maasai tribe, you find these lesos that they like wearing. When you go into the home and homestead setup, you find polygamy, a lot of polygamy, which is permitted within the Luo culture. You find a man with 2, 3, 4 wives, but when you come down into the Kikuyu tribes, this is not something that is there. In the Kikuyu tribe traditionally, some practice it, but it's not predominant in the Kikuyu tribes. So there's a lot of different tribal patterns in the African context as well.
Oh, that's awesome. And so then my next question on that is, because you brought in like the different practices with each tribe, and this has been on my mind because recently my Chinese students honored me with a Chinese name. It's the Chinese word for hummingbird, which I'm still learning how to pronounce. I'll look it up in a minute, but they just gave it to me last night, which I thought was incredibly sweet. And the reason it was hummingbird was because I have Cherokee blood in me, but I'm not an enrolled member of the tribe. However, I am an honorary member because one of the elders in that tribe chose a name for me and accepted me into her clan, her family. And so my Cherokee name is Hummingbird, and she basically kind of watched me for a few months, observed my personality and my movements and things like that. And because she says I'm always like up and busy and running around everywhere and doing stuff, I'm like a hummingbird. I never sit still. So that was how I received that name. I'm curious, is that similar? Are there naming patterns or naming customs? And we've talked about this briefly, but I kind of want to talk specifically about a tribal name. Are infants or young adults at any point given a special tribal name from their community?
Yes, the naming patterns are also different from tribe to tribe. For instance, in my tribe, you are named based on the time of day that you were born. Basically, that is what used to happen. Of course, this has changed over time. People are naming their kids or based on many different things. For instance, I, Adhiambo, was born in the evening. Odhiambo is evening in Luo. So if you are a male child born in the evening, you're called Adhiambo. You're called Odhiambo. If you're female like me, you're called Adhiambo. If you're born at night, it's Otieno. Otieno is the Luo word for night time. So if you're born at night and you're a man and you're a boy, you're called Otieno. If you are a female child born at night, it's Atieno. So that was the way the naming used to be done back in the day. But you find that nowadays people find creative ways of still naming their kids in the Luo names, the Luo second names, but they've made it a little bit more creative. Like for instance, there are names like Hera. Hera is love in Luo. So you find some Luo parents naming their kids Hera. That is not a traditional naming pattern in the Luo community, but since you want to like evolve a little bit, but also you also want to still retain a Luo identity for your child. So the child is bringing you love and something like that. So you name them Hera or Howie. My son is called Howie. Howie is like luck or good luck, something of the sort. He came into my life at a time when everything was like just going in downhill, downhill, downhill. But so that is why I named him that, Howie.
Oh, that's awesome. I have a student named Hawi, so and she lives in Nairobi. Now I know what her name means, so that'll be a very interesting conversation in our next class together about her name. I'm excited to actually start bringing in students from Kenya into my classrooms, virtual classroom, of course, for at least now. Hopefully one day I'll get to teach in person in Kenya. But yeah, it's fascinating. The more I connect with people in Kenya, the more I just fall in love with the culture and the language and everything about it. I've never even stepped foot in there, and I feel like I already have friends and family there that will welcome me in as soon as I land. So that's going to be a really cool experience to actually watch Kenya come to life for me instead of just be this like fantasy in my head that I'm hope and pray for one day. So let's go ahead and switch over to waist speeds. So I'll speak with Maureen on this one because she's the one that first introduced me to it. She showed me a picture of them, and I instantly just fell in love with them. And we'll include a link to a photo in the description of this video so you guys can see what waist beads are and have that image in your mind while you're listening to Maureen. So first off, Maureen, what are waist beads? What are they used for? Explain just kind of the basics to us.
Okay, waist beads are like we say they are people know them as they were used as belts, they were used as charms, they were used in different ways some time back, but waist beads are the things that necklaces, let me put it this way, it's chains that are made for the waist. They help women mostly for shaping. They helped women to entice men. In the tradition back then, waist beads were used in the bedrooms. Mostly they were worn in the bedrooms. They were not allowed to leave the bedroom. They were used for during sex, during when you're sleeping with your man, you wear them. They were like an enticement. It's like an aphrodisiac. That was how it was used. Then it took a different turn. It was used as charms to get a man that you're interested with through sex. So once you sleep with a guy, when you are having the waist beads, he will do anything for you and he'll forget where he comes from. So he'll follow you. So it was used as charms. Also, it was used as charms for children, so that a long time ago, we used to say that there are people who can make your child sick by just looking at them. So they were adorned with waist beads so that they can repel the witchcraft that can be expelled to them. Nowadays, we put on waist beads for decoration, for fun, to feel beautiful, to maintain a certain weight, to get that waistline that you need. So waist beads depends from which culture you are from and how you want to use it.
Well, that's really fascinating because it sounds like this is the Kenyan version or African version of lingerie. And of course, Western women have used lingerie for years, for centuries, to entice men in the bedroom. And I also find it fascinating that it's a very easy and simple tool for weight management. Basically, it's just like if your jeans are getting tight, in America, you have to switch to your fat jeans until you put down some weight. Is that similar of a use for them? Like you have your set of your skinny waist beads, and then you've got your fat waist beads, and so you realize, oh, I need to cut back when I'm having to switch to my fat waist beads, or my skinny ones are getting tight.
No, when you have waist beads, it's like you've decided this is the size I want to maintain on my waist. So you can, when they start tightening, you know that now your waist is getting bigger, so you need to reduce. They're just there to maintain a certain waistline that doesn't go beyond the ideal one that you want. There's no fat waist bead and thin waist bead. These are just waist bead. You go, they measure your waist, and then you say, this is what I want. So when you see them starting to sag a bit, now I have cut, my waist is at the level that I want.
I have to say these look far more comfortable than any lingerie I've ever worn. So I cannot wait to actually, make or purchase my own waist beads when I'm in Kenya. I'm looking at pictures online now, and they're so beautiful. The patterns in them and the colors that are used. And they set off beautifully against the skin tones and the variety of colors that you see. Across humanity. So one thing that I want to ask would it be considered cultural appropriation for a Mzungu to start wearing waist beads? Is that considered culturally offensive, or is that welcomed?
Okay, sometime long ago it was offensive, but nowadays, because of that intercultural thing, people are allowed to wear them so long as you don't abuse them. You are supposed to wear them. Mostly we are told when you wear waist beads, no, you're not supposed to show them off.
So then
you're supposed, yeah.
Oh, well, I was going to ask my question was, so if you are a Mzungu, you should definitely follow the cultural norms for how to use these waist beads and not just wear them out for fashion everywhere you go.
Yes, you see, like me, when I wear them, it's very, very rarely you see them. And when you see them, it means that maybe I've bent and they've like come out of the trouser or the skirt that I'm wearing. But you're not supposed to let them be seen. Mostly because some men, it drives some men crazy when they see the beads, the men that understand what waist beads are. So when they see them, they go nuts about them. So you are told to try to not show them off. Some men, when they see them, they'll assume you want to entice them to make them follow you, maybe with charm. So you have to be careful where you wear them and how you show them. Very few people should know that you're wearing waist beads, by the way.
So can I add something a little bit on that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I heard somewhere that this the in some communities, like in the Ghanaian cultures, this and in the traditional days, the different types of colors for waist beads meant different things. Like if you are wearing a red waist bead, your husband will know that you are on your menses, so you cannot have sex at that time. When you are wearing like white beads, it means that you're giving a green light for sex and for action. So that is the reason why that is one of the reasons why it's like was inappropriate for women to show off their waist beads in public, because it is supposed to symbolize, for instance, if you're wearing a white one, it's supposed to symbolize that you are ready for action, you're ready for sex. So when you're wearing it all over out there, it shows people all over, all sorts of men, that hey, I'm available, I'm ready for action. So I think that is one of the reasons why it was like, yeah, you're not supposed to put on these things in public. You're inviting each and every man out there to come.
Okay, let
Yeah.
me add something about this also before you come in, Chris. In the in the in the home setup, in some cultures, when your husband sees you wearing a waist bead, let's say Ugandan culture, when your husband, you've taken a shower and you walk in the bedroom and you come out and he sees the waist bead, he knows that my wife is horny and she wants some. So you're being told that please, when you wear them with a very good reason, and try not to show them off, because different men understand differently. And you have just to be careful when you wear them, Chris.
That's very good advice, because I'm looking at them and I'm going, I want to just wear these around everywhere, just everywhere. They're beautiful. It's going to be like necklaces for my waist. But yeah, understanding that cultural background to it is definitely, I don't want to go into the culture ignorant and do something inappropriate or potentially offensive, especially if I'm wearing them around a married man. That would be incredibly offensive to his wife. So it's very important that we are educated on these cultural things if Westerners want to come to Kenya, so that we're not, one, appropriating the Kenyan cultures, and like forgetting all the history and the tradition behind them, and two, not just outright insulting people by wearing them casually in the company of men that are not available to us. So I think that's very important to keep in mind when you're entering into another culture, is to learn that culture, and be respectful of that culture. It really is, because in Western culture as well, we don't talk about these issues openly very much, or we're starting to, but it's still hard for women to bring up these topics. And with men, to like say, hey, we're ready to like get freaky.
Yeah.
And so having that kind of easy way to indicate that without overtly bringing attention to it is kind of interesting to me. I'm much more of that kind of person that's like, I'll just tell you straight up if I'm horny. But or I will definitely make it known through body language, and so it's interesting to see that there are other options for communicating that, because communication is such a cool thing in humanity, the way we express ourselves, and these kinds of traditions that are held throughout the world. Women in Western culture will wear bangly bracelets because and culturally, the history about this was that the men could hear the bracelets like jingling, or the jewelry would catch their eye, and therefore, like if you're wearing a low-cut shirt and you've got a beautiful pendant around your neck, it drags their eyes to your breast area. And it's interesting to see that those cultural things are all over the world. It really does kind of remind me, though, of that we are very much still just like animals in the way we do our mating performances. Peacocks will show off their grand feathers to attract the attention of a peahen, and we very much kind of do the same thing as humans. We find ways to attract attention to the parts of our body that we believe are attractive to the opposite sex, or to whatever sex you're attracted to, and I find that fascinating. Just the evolvement of it from, the peacock showing off his feathers to the human wearing waist beads or necklaces or whatever else we use to entice the one that we want. So yeah, that's a fascinating conversation. I really kind of want to dive back into so you talked about the colors. A green means go, and red means you're on your period. So are there actual like culturally significant patterns? Like does each tribe have a pattern of colors or a variety of colors that it prefers to use in waist beads, or are these completely personal preference, whatever you want?
Okay, when it comes to it's mostly about from culture to culture, different cultures, different colors. You see, like she said, Ronnie said about Ghanaians having white and then having red and then having green. Those are from Ghanaians. Every African culture that wear waist beads have their own colors and their own meanings. But when it comes to Nairobi, because mostly nowadays most women in Nairobi like wear them mostly, they have their own color preferences of how they want their waist bead to be like. So from one person to another person, there is that color difference. But if you have been taught about the waist beads, you'll be told you need to put on this color because this color is good and this is what and what. You have to learn about the colors before you start making the waist beads, or you have to understand the culture behind it before you start wearing them.
So this kind of brings me into another topic that's going on in Western culture. We're now beginning to teach young people in Western culture that whatever you adorn your body with, you should do it because you prefer it, you like it. We're kind of changing that mindset of girls should put on makeup to please men to girls should put on makeup if they want to because they like how it looks on themselves. Or boys can even put on makeup in Western culture now, because if that's what makes them feel comfortable and that's what makes them feel like themselves, they should get to do that. And I understand that there's going to be a lot of cultural differences regarding that, just because African culture tends to follow more traditional rules and guidelines as far as behavior for males and females, which is fine. It's variant on the culture, but I'm wondering if there is also a similar change going on in Kenyan culture or in African culture where young people are being taught to put on what makes them happy and makes them comfortable and worry less about what they think would attract a mate. What is the idea behind that?
Okay, from how I know, most of us are more like me. Mostly, I come from. When you come from a level, mostly culture doesn't go far from you. So I grew up knowing that you should wear what makes you happy, but you should wear decently. There are some clothes you can't wear where elderlies are. There are some clothes you can't wear where your grandpa or men are. So we grew up in that kind of setup, and because of that, it was instilled in us. It's very hard for us to walk away from it. Like I can say, for example, if I'm going to see my mother-in-law, for example, there are some things I can't wear going there because of that whole issue of she will assume. It's because of that you just try to be as decent as you can. So it's changing, but it's not changing that much. Maybe me and Ronnie being the mother-in-laws in future will change that format of you have to wear like this to come and see me. But for now, we're still there, but not that olden days, but at least modernized a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's also similar in Western culture. So while let's say it's a transgendered male or a transgendered female, and they're beginning to wear clothes of their gender instead of clothes of their sex. what they were born as. Most of them still would not go to grandma and grandpa's dressed in their preferred gender. They would still go dressed in their traditional sex. So I have friends that are cross dressers. I have friends that are transgendered. I myself am pansexual and polysexual. So there's a wide variety that I see here. But in all honesty, I wouldn't sit down with my grandmother and have a conversation with her about my non-traditional preferences when it comes to who I am attracted to. And I often see that the similar things going on with my transgendered and cross-dressing friends. So that these are, while they may feel perfectly comfortable in their own skin when they're finally wearing the clothes that fit their gender, their internal gender instead of their external sex, they don't want to do that around people that they know it would make uncomfortable. Because of the history and the time period that they grew up in. So I do think it's going to just be a process. Over time, people just stop caring. Grandma might care, but mom's probably going to care less. And then sister is definitely not going to care at all. So I think that's just a progression of time. Would you agree with that? That over time, it will just modernize more and more, and people will just start becoming more comfortable with what they want in life?
Yeah, true. With time, we'll all learn to be comfortable with what makes us more comfortable with and our skin, because some of these things that we are going through, it's because of that restriction. If I am to go to visit my grandma and I put on a trouser, she won't have a problem with it because she's my grandma. But when I'm going to my mother-in-law and I put on a trouser, she'll be like, what are you wearing? So you see, from your side of your home, your grandma got used to you dressing like this because you grew like this. But there are some things when you go to your in-laws, you have to watch. That is in the African culture. We have to watch how we dress up because we don't want our mother-in-laws and our in-laws to assume that we are like that. You can't put on a short dress and go to your mother-in-law and she starts telling you, I want you to clean my house, and you didn't carry a lace or a kanga to cover yourself with. She'll start saying so many insulting words. So we try to wear decently when we go to our in-laws. And when you go to your grandma like me, I wear anything that I feel comfortable because that is my grandma.
I think that's awesome. You get such acceptance from your home family, as far as what makes you comfortable. It reminds me. I have a new friend that I've met here, who is part Surinamese and part Dutch, and she works for a company called Lush. Which is a perfume company, basically a cosmetics company as well. And the policy of Lush is so supportive of their employees that she is allowed to wear whatever she feels comfortable in. And what she actually feels comfortable in that just makes her feel, safe and happy is wearing a bikini, and which I think is really cool that she just feels so comfortable in her own skin that she could walk around basically almost naked at work and no one cares. She's just accepted and she's this sweet person and everybody loves her, and they don't focus on what she's wearing, they focus on who she is. And I like seeing that cultures all over the world are starting to evolve to just accept people how they are instead of what they're wearing. Now, my hope is that in the future, and this is just my hope as an outsider. So that waist beads will become so accepted as being seen in the culture that I could just wear them around anywhere. But I'm assuming that will probably take a long time if it happens at all because of the cultural traditions around it. But this has been a really fascinating conversation on this. We'll go ahead and end our podcast here, and we will be joining you again tomorrow with our topic on tribal conflicts and finding peace. In particular, we're going to focus on the Hutus and the Tutsi tribes. This conflict was in a neighboring country to Kenya, but we'll get into that more in our next episode. For today, guys, explain, in the comments, would you like to wear waist beads as well? And if so, what colors would you pick? What preferences would you have? And what makes you feel most comfortable when you're wearing it? What would you like to just be able to walk around in all the time if no one cared what you wore? I think that's a really good conversation to have too. All right, so thank you both for joining me on this one, and we will see you again next time. Ronnie and Maureen, you want to say farewell to our listeners?
Thank you for listening, and see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening, and see you next time.
All right, see you next time, and we'll talk about the Hutus and the Tutsis.